Kalen Zhao had not moved from his meditative stance in 17 hours. The ancient discipline of Zhen Kong Fu, the way of the trembling void, demanded absolute stillness even as the world crumbled around him. And right now, the world was doing exactly that. Dust rained from the ceiling of the underground monastery as another shockwave rolled through the bedrock. Cracks spiderwebbed across the 1,000-year-old murals, depicting the first human colonists landing on NOCTARI. Kalen's fingers remained interlaced at his solar plexus, his breath a silent tide ebbing and flowing through meridians that had been honed by 30 years of brutal training. "Master," whispered Ling, his youngest acolyte, from the meditation chamber's entrance. Her voice trembled. "The ground is speaking. The elders say it as an earthquake." Kalen opened his eyes. They were the color of forged steel, cold, sharp, and utterly without fear. "The ground does not speak, child. It screams." He rose in one fluid motion, his robed body uncoiling like a spring. Unlike the soft silk garments of the monastery's priests, Kalen wore the hardened weave of a fist of the outer dark, a warrior monk trained not in prayer, but in the annihilation of threats that crawled up from NOCTARI's unexplored depths. Embedded along his forearms were slender strips of phase shift alloy, dormant now but ready to extend into razor-edged techo claws at the flex of a tendon. The monastery of Zhantian Heaven's Severing Peak sat atop the only stable landmass on NOCTARI's southern continent. For 60 years, the human colony had thrived here, harvesting the planet's unique bioluminescent fungi and trading with the reclusive Xylos, a race of silicon-based arthropods who dwelt in the planet's upper mantle. The Xylos had warned the humans never to drill deeper than 3 kilometers. They had spoken of something sleeping in the planetary core. Something ancient. Something hungry. The colony's mining corporation had ignored the warnings. 6 months ago, they breached the 4-kilometer mark. Now the tremors came every day. "The city is evacuating," Ling said as Kalen strode past her into the main corridor. The monastery's plasma lanterns flickered, casting dancing shadows across the faces of 100 warrior monks who had already assembled in full battle regalia. Each wore the same hardened weave, the same dormant techo claws. Each had the same cold fire burning behind their eyes. "Where is the warden?" Kalen asked. "Already in the eastern watchtower. He says the seismic sensors are picking up something massive moving toward the surface. Something organic." Kalen's jaw tightened. He had spent 20 years studying the fragmented Xylos records of the NOCTARI, the so-called dreamers in the dark. The Xylos believed that the planet itself was a living entity, and that its core was not molten iron but a gestalt consciousness of unimaginable scale. The mining operation had not pierced rock. It had pierced flesh. "Sound the iron bell," Kalen commanded. "Every monk to the perimeter walls. This is not a drill." Ling's face went pale. The iron bell had been rung only once in the monastery's history, on the day of the Great Hatching. 50 years ago, when a brood of subterranean Vora worms had devoured an entire outpost of 300 souls. The bell meant total war. It meant that some things could not be stopped, only delayed. Part 2. The Breaking of the Sky. The iron bell's mournful tone was still echoing across the valley when the ground split open. Kalen stood atop the eastern wall, his bare feet gripping the ancient stone as the world heaved beneath him. Below, the colony city of Duskfall sprawled across the valley floor, a maze of prefab habitats, fungal farms, and cargo lifts that now swarmed with panicked civilians. Evacuation shuttles screamed into the purple-gray sky, their ion trails cutting ribbons through the perpetual twilight of NOCTARI's tidally locked hemisphere. "Contact!" shouted a monk from the western watchtower. "Sector 7. The mining shaft." Kalen turned. 3 kilometers distant, the colony's primary mining rig, a skeletal tower of carbon fiber and regret, was tilting sideways as the ground beneath it bulged upward. The bulge grew, and then burst. What emerged from the rupture was not a worm. It was a hand, black as obsidian, large enough to crush a cargo hauler. It punched through the crust with a sound like a planet screaming. Each finger was a tapered blade of chitinous armor, jointed in ways that defied human anatomy. The arm that followed was a tree trunk of pulsing muscle and bioluminescent veins that throbbed with an angry orange light. Then came the face. Kalen had seen the Xylo's carvings. He had memorized every glyph, every warnings, every description of the NOCTARI's form. But the carvings had been abstractions, artifacts of a species trying to describe the indescribable. The reality was far worse. The creature that pulled itself from the planet S-wound was easily 60 meters tall. Its body was a nightmare fusion of insect, reptile, and something that had no earthly analog. A crown of antennae sprouted from its elongated skull, each one twitching as if tasting the air. Its eyes were not eyes, but sockets, hollow pits from which tendrils of dark energy leaked like smoke. And its mouth. Its mouth was a vertical slit that ran from its brow to its thorax, lined with rings of crystalline teeth that rotated in opposite directions. The NOCTARI had arrived. All monks. Zhenkong formation. Kalen roared, his voice amplified by the resonance chamber built into his throat, a cybernetic modification that all fists of the outer dark received upon their final initiation. Do not engage directly. Use the terrain. Use the artillery. Buy the evacuation as much time as you can. The creature took its first step onto the surface of Noctar. The impact sent a shockwave that flattened 3 city blocks. Dust and debris billowed outward in a roiling cloud. Through the haze, Kalen saw the mining rig collapse entirely, its wreckage swallowed by the chasm from which the monster had emerged. And then he saw the others. Behind the first NOCTARI, a second hand breached the crust. Then a third. Then a fifth, and Kalen realized with dawning horror that the first creature was not an adult. It was a child. The others were larger. Much larger. Master, Ling said, her voice barely a whisper now. She stood beside him on the wall. Her techo claws extended 10 centimeters of phase shift alloy that could cut through tank armor. Against that, they were needles. There are too many. Kalen placed a hand on her shoulder. There is no such thing as too many. In the way of the trembling void, there is only the fight in front of you. And the next. And the next. He leaped from the walls. Part 3. The Dance of Steel and Thunder. The fall was 40 meters. Kalen landed on the roof of a collapsing warehouse, rolled through the impact, and came up sprinting. His body moved with the impossible grace of a man who had spent decades mastering every muscle fiber, every nerve endings, every microsecond of reaction time. The Zhen Kong Fu technique allowed him to sense vibrations in the air, the ground, even the subtle tremors of an enemy's intent. Right now, the entire world was vibrating with murderous intent. The nearest NOCTARI, the smaller one, had turned its attention to the evacuation shuttles. A tendril of dark energy lashed from its eye socket, wrapped around a shuttle mid-ascent, and crushed it like paper. The explosion painted the sky orange. Kalen reached the creature's foot just as it lifted its leg for another step. He leaped again, this time using the monster's own ankle ridges as handholds. His techo claws sank into the chitin, finding purchase where no human should have been able to climb. The creature's hide was warm uncomfortably, and he could feel something pulsing beneath it. Blood. No, not blood. Something else. Something that hummed with psychic resonance. He climbed faster. Below him, the other monks engaged the remaining NOCTARI. He could hear the thunder of artillery from the colony's automated defense grid, plasma cannons and railguns that had been designed to repel pirate raids. Not titans from the core. The weapons scored black marks on the creatures. Armor but did not stop them. Nothing stopped them. A shape shot past Kalen's head, a thunder crow, one of the colony's few combat drones. The robot was a meter-long dart of carbon fiber and spite, its nose-mounted laser drilling into the NOCTARI's thigh. The creature swatted it out of the air with a casual backhand, sending the drone spiraling into a fungal silo. The silo exploded, showering the valley with burning spores. Kalen reached the creature's waist. From here, he could see the vertical mouth pulsing, the crystalline teeth grinding against each other, with a sound like 1,000 swords being sharpened at once. He adjusted his grip, flexed his leg muscles, and launched himself toward the creature's chest. This is the moment, he thought. The moment the Xylos described. The moment when the dreamer wakes and the dance begins. He had no weapon that could kill a NOCTARI. The fists of the outer dark had never been meant to kill gods, only to slow them down long enough for humanity to run. But Kalen had spent 20 years studying the Xylos records, and he had found something the elders had overlooked. A weakness, not in the bodies, but in the mind. The NOCTARI were not individual creatures. They were appendages of a single planetary consciousness, the dreamer in the dark. And like any consciousness, it could be disrupted. Kalen slammed his palms against the creature's chest, directly over where a human heart would be. He activated the resonance chamber in his throat and screamed not a battle cry, but a focused harmonic frequency that he had calibrated using the Xylos. Ancient recordings. The scream was pain. The scream was memory. The scream was the echo of every mining drill that had ever pierced the dreamer's flesh, amplified 1,000-fold. The NOCTARI froze. For one perfect, terrible second, the creature's hollow eye sockets met Kalen's steel-gray gaze. The tendrils of dark energy recoiled. The vertical mouth snapped shut. And then, with a sound like a mountain weeping, the creature screamed back. The psychic feedback hurled Kalen from the monster's chest. He fell through the burning air, through the smoke and the ash and the screams of dying civilians, and hit the ground hard enough to shatter 3 ribs. He lay there, staring up at the purple sky. As the NOCTARI staggered, its movements became jerky, uncoordinated. The other creatures, the larger ones, turned to look at their stricken kin. For a moment, the entire valley fell silent. Then the largest NOCTARI, a titan easily 100 meters tall, reached down and absorbed the smaller one. Its hand dissolved into a cloud of dark energy that enveloped the smaller creature, pulling it back into the planetary crust. The other NOCTARI followed, sinking into the ground like stones into water. The tremors stopped. The sky cleared. And Kalen Zhao, broken and bleeding on the scorched earth of Noctar, understood what he had done. He had not driven the dreamer away. He had merely reminded it of a pain. It had forgotten the pain of being wounded by the small, fragile creatures who dared to live on its skin. The dreamer would remember now, and it would come back. Not tomorrow, not next week, but someday. When it did, it would not send its children. It would come itself. Epilogue. The iron bell silent. 3 days later, Kalen stood on the monastery's eastern wall and watched the evacuation fleet depart. Ship after ship rose into the twilight, carrying the survivors of Duskfall to the orbital platforms where they would await relocation to a new world. Noctar was lost. The colony was abandoned. The Xylos had already retreated to their mantle cities, sealing themselves behind barriers of compressed carbon. Ling stood beside him, her arm in a sling. "Master," she said quietly, "the elders want to know if we're leaving too." Kalen looked down at his hands. The Techo claws had been shattered in the fall. His ribs were held together by synth flesh and prayer. But his eyes, his steel-gray eyes, had never been sharper. "No," he said, "we stay. But the dreamer is not our enemy." Kalen turned to face her. "It is the wounded heart of this world. We wounded it. We owe it a debt." He reached into his robe and withdrew a small crystal, a Xylos memory shard, pulsing with a soft blue light. "The Xylos taught me something in the days before they sealed themselves away. The dreamer is not evil. It is lonely. It has slept for 1 billion years, dreaming of a time when it was not alone. The mining rig did not wake it in anger. It woke it in hope." Ling stared at him. "You want to befriend the planet-eating monster?" Kalen smiled, "A rare thing. And genuine. I want to teach it kung fu." He walked back into the monastery, leaving Ling gaping on the walls. The iron bell hung silent above her, its bronze surface reflecting the distant lights of the departing fleet. Somewhere beneath her feet, In the darkness of the planetary core, a consciousness stirred. It remembered the small creature who had screamed with such beautiful pain. It remembered the harmonic frequency that had cut through 1 billion years of dreaming. And for the first time since the stars were young, the dreamer in the dark felt something other than hunger. It felt curiosity.